Over there, please, just opposite me. Wouldn't want anyone else in the way. Now, cast the ward spell and keep it up. Hold still. Excellent work.
I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that for most characters, even those heavily specializing in magic, this is the only time they'll ever use wards. Ever since the release of the game, wards have had a somewhat tainted reputation, with many believing that their benefits do not outweigh their downsides. But still, is there a way to make them useful? Sure, you can stack your magic resistant Atronach stones to deal with hostile spells, but that's boring, and we've been doing that for over 12 years now. Let's lay down everything there is to know about wards, and see if these underutilized spells actually have a reason to exist. Casting a ward will create a transparent shield in front of your character. The spell gives a small increase to the caster's armor rating, meaning that an active ward will reduce physical damage, but this really isn't all that noticeable, and we are not going to be focusing on that as it's not their main use. Their most important characteristic is their ability to negate magical attacks. We'll get more into the different types of attacks they can block, but for now, let's pretend that we're only dealing with destruction spells. Any spell that hits the ward without breaking it will have its damage completely negated. If the ward is broken, you will be staggered, but the spell damage will still either be negated or it is greatly reduced. I'm still not sure what causes one and the other. This protection will even persist for a split second after the ward is broken or you stop casting, which is why you'll sometimes see fireballs seemingly dissipating all on their own. What does it take to break the ward though? The three types of wards have their own caps on how many points of spell damage they can block. Let's refer to it as ward HP from now on. Lesser wards have 40 HP, steadfast 60 and greaters 80. If the damage of the spell exceeds the HP of the ward, it is broken. If the damage is exactly equal, it will dissipate without staggering the player. To illustrate this, I have given Benor a staff of Incinerate, which deals 60 damage, and had him attack my wards. The greater ward will completely negate the spell without breaking. The steadfast will negate the spell, but is taken offline, while the lesser is completely broken and staggers the player. It needs to be mentioned though that a ward will not have full HP as soon as it is cast. Wards start out with 0 HP, but this will increase as the spell is continuously cast, up until its maximum HP value. This means that a 25 damage Ice Spike could break the 80 HP greater ward if it connects when the ward has not gained enough HP. Wards will continue regenerating their HP after they lose it, so 2 casts of Incinerate that deal a total of 120 damage will not break a single greater ward unless both destruction spells hit in very quick succession. Wards will have gained their max HP after a little under a second of continuous casting, with higher tier variants accumulating their HP faster. You can tell when the ward is at full power when there appears to be a white ball of energy emanating from your hand that radiates to the edges of the ward. Be sure to move side to side when out in the open or weave back and forth between cover to give wards time to recharge. There's quite a bit of complicated mechanics at play here, but the main gist is this. Wards will, for the most part, completely negate or severely reduce incoming spell damage, with higher tier variants being less likely to break. This all sounds pretty nice, so why is their reputation so bad? The problem comes from their cost. Without any modifiers, the lesser ward consumes 34 magic per second, the steadfast 58, and the greater a whopping 86. A player straight out of Helgen will only be able to gain roughly 3 seconds of magical protection with the lowest tier spell before running out completely. And since wards require continuous casting to gain their full benefits, you start seeing the issue here, especially when you wish to use them alongside other spells. Mitigating their costs, therefore, is the first step to making wards usable. First of all, you're obviously going to want the relevant restoration perks that have the costs of the spells. Then you'll want to stack it on top of some fortified restoration apparel that provide a further decrease to the spell costs. It might seem obvious, but ask yourself, How many times have you ever considered the Fortify Restoration enchantment, even when you rely on healing spells? Second, a higher magicka pool is another obvious factor that is going to compound the efficiency of wards, along with their cost reduction boosts. This is especially true if you wish to use wards alongside other types of spells. And for the third way towards making wards efficient is to get the Ward Absorb perk. Unlocked at level 60 Restoration, this perk makes it that enemy spells that hit the ward will transfer a part of their magicka cost over to you. You might think that this is a way to regen magicka in the middle of a fight, but unless you get the ward cost to 0 or near 0, it just isn't going to be the case. Instead, it is actually better to think of it as another Fortify Restoration boost, as it makes the ward more sustainable, but this one doesn't use up any enchantment slots. You won't see its effects against low level spells with lower costs, but the higher level ones will give a noticeable jolt of magicka whenever they hit. Now that we have rectified the main issue with wards, what next? Well, you don't necessarily have to use the highest tier ward available for every situation, even at endgame. A steadfast ward will usually be enough for one-on-one duels against non-boss mages. Unless you're fighting very high level foes or facing multiple magic attacks at once, the greater ward is somewhat overkill. In addition, there are many enemies that have slow and telegraphed attacks, like Wisp Mothers or Dragon Priests. It is therefore possible to only have your ward active when the enemy attack hits. It is risky and requires very precise timing, but once you master it, it is going to save a lot of magicka. You will also have to consider the fact that your magicka will not naturally regenerate while casting a ward, even with a 100% Fortify Restoration boost that completely nullifies the costs. This is going to be problematic if you wish to use a ward for one hand and something like a destruction spell for another. A way to rectify this would be to use another set of Fortify enchantments for the other school of magic, but it's a bit of a late game build. The easiest solution is to just stock up on Restore Magicka potions. Boring, but it works. If you use your wards right, then the amount of Magicka potions you spend sustaining those wards is going to be much lower than the health potions you use when just tanking the hostile spells. Another solution for mages though is to use staves. Instead of requiring magicka to cast, these require filled soul gems. There are staves for every non-master vanilla destruction spell, so be sure to pay Master Neloth a visit. There are also plenty of unique staves that can be used, like the Staff of Magnus that has excellent synergy. It is a rare method of regenerating magicka while casting a ward, as it sucks the magic juice out of your enemy and transfers it over to you. But you don't necessarily have to be a pure mage to use wards. They work just as well at closing the distance for one-handed warriors, especially since the standard resist magic enchantments will still cause your character to be slowed when hit with frost spells. Wards will let you move at full speed while completely negating spell damage. Wards are a great way to make your enemies waste most of their magicka. Against mages, you will notice that for the beginning of the fight, they will use their spells far more aggressively, and then the rate at which they use them decreases. You can have mages waste their initial pools of magic as they fire on your wards. You can even help a bit with lightning spells. After that, they will be more vulnerable. I have mentioned the resist magic enchantment on a few occasions, and I guess I should briefly cover it. It is widely considered to be superior to wards, as it is constant and doesn't require active effort on behalf of the player. However, unlike wards, resist magic will never completely nullify magic damage, as it is capped at 85%. While you can further compound that with the specific elemental resistance enchantments, up to a 97% damage reduction against a given element, it is something for endgame builds. I will provide another example for that. My character here currently has a magic resistance of 45%. Penor is currently penetrating him with 60 damage ice spears that have their damage reduced to 33 thanks to those resistances. This, however, is only for the default, adept difficulty. When we switch to legendary, where damage dealt to the player is tripled, we will instead receive 99 damage. The magic resistance is still the same, but as the damage dealt to the player increases, what would have previously taken 10 hits to kill would now only take 4. As the difficulty increases, you are going to need more and more resist magic effects to retain the same level of survivability. Wards, however, are some of the few tools at your disposal that retain their effectiveness across all difficulty settings. The Ice Spear that would deal 180 points of damage on Legendary will not break the Greater Ward's 80 HP, as the game uses the default damage numbers specifically when dealing with wards. This gives a strong case for using wards over magic resistance or the unreliable spell absorption effect on higher difficulties, but that doesn't mean you can't use both. I mentioned in the beginning that there are other magical attacks that wards can block, so let's cover them here. Dragon Breath attacks fall into that category. Just make sure you cast before they start breathing frost or fire, and even the lesser ward will block that. This is something that even someone without any relevant perks or boosts can utilize at least once during a fight. Have you ever had your shouts dispelled by an enemy ward? Well, that works in reverse too. The shouts used by some dragons and high level Draugr can be negated with wards. No more ragdolling or disarms when exploring Nordic ruins. Wards can also block the poison cubes that frostbite spiders fire. Generally, anything that fires a projectile but doesn't deal physical damage can be blocked by a ward. I wanted to dedicate a section to analyzing the Ahzidal's Gauntlets of warding, but I can't. They seem to be glitched, as their effects of wards absorbing 50% magicka while being 25% weaker doesn't seem to apply. I tested with all sorts of combination, but it still seemed that there was no difference. It is possible that I'm doing something wrong, or they're glitched for my character specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were bugged all this time and no one really cared. Wards may not be the first choice for mitigating magic damage, but you can make them work, and using them successfully is rewarding in and of itself. That's it for the video. Hope you learned something useful.